while we've got Ralph, I think it is very valuable to try to predict what we think this committee ranking will look like. Because bear in mind, and Ralph, I know you've been amused by all my awareness gap tweets whenever someone yells at me about my bracket and say, how can you put this team here? That's not how the selection process works. And I'm like, no, it does. I had somebody this morning say, Andy's an idiot. Boise State's going to be number 5 because the 5th highest ranked conference champ gets the number 5 seed, which is not true. Yeah. But the committee is not doing it with an eye toward the bracket. They are just trying to put the teams in order. Mm-hmm. So where do we think, I'll start with this one, because this is the conversation that got us going Sunday when you were listening to our Saturday night show and you were texting me and Ari. Where do we think Georgia moves? Because they knocked Georgia out after the loss to Ole Miss. They put Georgia at 12, which made them the first team out. Where do they move up to?
The precedent was set last week that they will make a big move, right? Because they moved Georgia from 3 to 12 last week after it lost to Ole Miss. So I don't see any reason why you couldn't do 12 to 6. You know, do you still leave them behind an undefeated Indiana? A side note, hey man, for all the people who are caping up for the SEC is going to be okay. Like, don't worry. The poor SEC will be okay. I've seen so many people rush to the honor of the SEC over the last week or so. Going to be fine, guys. Don't worry about the SEC. Going to be fine. I think things will happen with the rankings in Indiana in the next couple of weeks that will sort it out. Let's put it that way.
I've been dying to talk about this scenario in my head as we were talking about the conference championship games and the consequences of losing it. And I am with you 100%, Ralph. If Ohio State and Oregon play in the Big Ten championship game, even if Oregon wins, I think Ohio State would be in with a win over Penn State. But doesn't that put Penn State and Indiana in a precarious situation? Because then you're wondering whether or not, like the loser of the Big Ten championship game, depending on what the rankings look like tonight, could have a secondary impact on teams that may find themselves on the bubble at the end of the year.
Are you saying because Ohio State would have 2 losses and that
their loss would look worse? You would have to find a way. But no, I'm not done yet. I'm not done.
Okay.
And Ohio State as a 2-loss team, you'd still have to find a spot for them, right? And then all of a sudden, you might not have 4 Big Ten teams in the field at that point. Because or do you think that, like, if Ohio State and Oregon play, that they're guaranteed to have 4 teams in the field? Because you have to acknowledge that Indiana is going to be in a head-to-head debate if they lose to Ohio State with somebody in the SEC. And the rankings tonight are going. You just said it's going to work out for the SEC. Well, who's it going to be at the expense of? Is what I'm trying to get to.
No, right. So when I say work out for the SEC, I mean like don't the poor SEC might not get 5 teams. Oh my God! My heart. The SEC might not get 5 teams. We should all storm the Capitol. Like honestly, like it'll be fine for the SEC. But you are right. So I think I'm agree with your overall point. I think I'm a little off on the secondary part of that. I think Indiana is in trouble if it loses this weekend. Don't lose. First of all, don't lose. Secondly, definitely don't lose by getting embarrassed. I think we are heading towards Indiana against an SEC team. Do we want 4 SEC teams or do we want 5? Excuse me. Do we want 5 SEC teams or 4 Big Ten teams? I think if Ohio State wins, loses this weekend, it could be in a little precarious position too. Though again, going back to sort of the power rankings and things like that, Ohio State probably, being Ohio State, gets a little benefit of the doubt too, and probably works its way in. What I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ari, because I think this is what you're alluding to. Ohio State being 10-2, I don't think matters to Penn State's resume or Indiana's resume. Ohio State, having lost twice to Oregon, is still a top 6 or 7 team. Like, that's still a really good team. I don't think the committee then goes, well, that loss to Ohio State is now a worse loss because Ohio State isn't as good. Like, losing twice to Oregon, I don't think dings the status of Ohio State enough for it to have like ancillary issues trickling.
I just mean from the standpoint that if Ohio State beats Oregon, then you're basically have a better case for why the Big Ten should have 4.
It's
not necessarily Ohio State dinging their resume directly, but in that debate between whether we should have 5 SEC teams or 4 Big Ten teams, if Ohio State loses again, then you have a 2-loss team that their best bullet point resume on the other 2 is losing to Ohio State closely. Like that to me is it makes it. And also, doesn't Penn State really have to root for Indiana or Ohio State this weekend? Like Penn State does not want Indiana to win this game.
Agreed.
Like,
I would tend to agree. It's better for I would tend to agree with that.
Penn State might be on the. So right now, Penn State, because of the benefit of their strength of schedule, has found themselves out of the crossfire of the debate. Like Indiana, as the 4th Big Ten team, is the one that's going to find itself in the debate. If Indiana beats Ohio State, I think Penn State could be out of the playoff.
Let's talk Prize Picks because there's action on Tuesday night. That's right. Download Prize Picks, America's most fun daily fantasy game. Use the code Staples when you sign up. Play $5, get $50 instantly. Yes, indeed, there's action tonight. Let's talk brothers. Ben Finley, brother of former NC State quarterback Ryan Finley. He plays for Akron. They're playing Kent State. His Prize Picks number tonight, 230.5 passing yards. Do you think he'll go more or less? You pick that square, you pick another square, and away you go. You can do as few as 2. The more you pick, the higher the potential payout. Another brother of a famous quarterback who also plays quarterback, Brett Gabbert, in his 94th season at Miami of Ohio. They're playing Northern Illinois tonight. 186.5 passing yards is his number. Will it be more? Will it be less? Who knows? But if you have a strong opinion, you may want to get that square on Prize Picks. So download the app, use the code Staples, play $5 and get $50 instantly.
Like I think it's that dire. Like Penn State, because who are you going to take? Penn State or Tennessee at the end of the year?
That's probably a coin toss to a certain degree, and I would probably take Penn State. But again, so by the way, I've been trying to circle where the hot spots are this weekend. Penn State, be careful against Minnesota. Be careful. Be very careful against Minnesota. I understand what you're saying there. Like Penn State, Tennessee, that's the argument I think we're heading towards. We're heading towards Big Ten, SEC, who gets that last spot. And whether it's Indiana, I'm assuming Indiana, which is probably a bad assumption to ever doubt Coach Siggs. Sorry, Coach Siggs and Curtis Rock and company. We're assuming that Indiana, because they're a 14 or 12 or 13 point underdog, might lose. But yes, I could see a scenario where Ohio State loses this game. Indiana then gets the big jump. Ohio State's still on the fringe, but in because they've beaten Penn State, and that puts Penn State in the hot seat as far as who gets that last spot.
If Ohio State loses to Indiana, there's no rational way that you could rank Penn State ahead of Ohio State. So that's the problem. Even if Penn State goes out and beats on Minnesota by 30 this weekend, if Ohio State loses at home to Indiana by 1, Indiana probably jumps up to 2 behind Oregon. Yeah. Ohio State would drop somewhere to be 6 or 7. Are you going to put Penn State there at 4?
But
it doesn't make any sense.
They don't necessarily need to be 4, but I'm also saying that if Penn State takes care of business the rest of the way, and again has beaten enough pretty good teams at 11-1, yes, I think they get into a debate with Tennessee or whoever that 5th SEC school is. But I also think that they have enough oomph in their schedule for it to be okay. So again, I think you're kind of hooked on Ohio State, Penn State, and the loser of that comparison is out. And I think that Penn State will have enough helium in their overall resume that at 11-1 it'll be okay. But
I want both of you, Ralph and Ari. I want you to look deep into your souls. I'm not trying to prejudice you. I want an honest opinion when I ask you this. I want you to look deep into your souls, and I want you to tell me if Tennessee played Penn State, if Ole Miss played Penn State, who do you think would win?
So I'm very cool with saying I think Ole Miss would beat Penn State.
Ole Miss is easy. Yeah, Ole Miss would beat Penn State.
I think Ole Miss might win this whole thing. So that's like
Okay, Tennessee.
I think Penn State and Tennessee are the same.
The same. They're the same team.
I think they're the same team. I think it's 17-16, and one makes a kick and one doesn't. And I think they're around the same team.
Tennessee and Penn State, like when you break it down, both have elite pass rushers.
Yeah.
They both have a quarterback that was a 5-star. One's
Incredibly frustrating offenses. Yes.
Incredibly frustrating offense, have been efficient in beating teams that they are better than for the most part. Now, the one thing that is interesting when you put it that way is that Penn State does not have the black mark on its resume that Tennessee's does.
That's what I'm saying.
Tennessee has a quality win, so those two things cancel out, right? Like if you have a quality win and a bad loss, or you have no bad losses and no quality wins, aren't those the same thing?
So I would tend to think, yes, you beat Alabama, that's a great win, but losing to Arkansas is not tremendous. And
they cancel out.
Yeah, so I think it cancels out a little bit. And again, it also goes back to this idea of I want to know about how you played your entire schedule, not just one or two games on your schedule. I think that a Tennessee Penn State comparison probably goes to Penn State. But again, I'm with you in the idea that my basic premise is SEC Big Ten. That's where the argument's going to be in a couple of weeks. That last spot is going to come down to an SEC team and a Big Ten team, I'm pretty sure.
And if it's Indiana with a 10-point loss to Ohio State, they're going to get they're out. Just so you know, I want everyone to know that. I think everybody,
you, Ari.
Yeah, everybody thinks that 11-1 Indiana is 100% in. I've been telling you for a freaking month. It's not true. I'm just telling you.
Ari, you and I are totally aligned on that one, and I think it would be awful. By the way,
it would be. Yeah,
what you want. This playoff expanded to get teams like Indiana in. I don't need the fifth best. I don't need the fifth best SEC team. I want Indiana.
That's what they sold you, Ralph. This is not to get teams like Indiana. This is to get teams like Tennessee in. It's not for Indiana.
Because Indiana's in the Big Ten. We're not talking about Boise's here. We're not talking about Tulane's here. We're talking about a great story in the Big Ten. Like, give me Indiana over the fifth best SEC team. Like,
expanded to get the biggest brands and the sexiest fan bases into the playoff.
But you can give me one spot for Indiana, right? You can give me one spot for the best story in college football.
I think Indiana's been incredible, and I actually think Indiana would be able to play a 4-quarter game with Tennessee. I think they're going to play a 4-quarter game with Ohio State. Like, this isn't a question, but I promise you, if it comes down to it at the end, and it's between an SEC team that has beaten Alabama or an Indiana team that has only lost to Ohio State and has no quality wins, they will not win that debate. We know how the committee operates. And I know that we're under the assumption that, we've never seen them do this before, so we don't know what's going to. We've seen them do it for 10 years, and they're going to do it the same exact way. There's more teams to fill out, but it's the same thing. But don't continue with the sales pitch of we expanded the playoff for continuity so we all can sit around a campfire and sing Kumbaya. We did it because we want Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and Ole Miss to have second and third chances. This is what we did it for. We didn't do it for the little guy. We did it for the big guy. And Indiana plays in a big guy conference, but we're not. This is not. Let's hold Indiana's hand and welcome into the party here. They have to win their way, and they've got to knock the fucking door down.
I'm going to laugh so hard if Indiana beats Ohio State.
No, but I'm just saying, like, Indiana has to knock the door down. No one's doing Indiana any favors. I'm telling you. You know how it's going to go.
You're just feeding Coach Siggs right now. Coach Siggs, like it.
I'm not saying anything negative about Indiana, but I'm not saying
have you seen Ghostbusters 2, Ari?
Who would see Ghostbusters?
When I was like I never saw Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters 2 is awesome. Not as good as 1, but awesome. And it has this ooze. It has this ooze that lives under the sewers and feeds off the city's negative energy. And like when you play it, Jackie Wilson higher and higher, it gets happy. Like Coach Siggs is just sitting here, like he's in his office right now, and he's feeling it all come into his body. He's like, what is this? And it's all of our negative energy. All of us saying they're going to get killed by Ohio State. And he's going to unleash it on the Buckeyes on Saturday.
1, I never said they're going to get killed by Ohio State. And 2, I don't think I ever said anything negative about Indiana's team.
It's not just you. It's the chat.
No, I know. Everybody. But I know that there's been a lot of assumptions that Indiana's going to lose. And honestly speaking, I was talking to a buddy of mine who does the numbers, and like, the numbers look pretty good for taking Indiana. I think I wish I could change my pick from Monday. I think it's going to be a game. But the point is, they are not going to be doing, like, if there is a debate to be had, the system is not doing it a favor. That's all I'm saying. And that we came into the year thinking everybody has a chance now and everybody gets to do this. Like, if Indiana goes 11-1 and does not get in, then that was all bullcrap, right? Like, that's a lie. All it is to give Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and all these other teams that haven't had remarkable years another chance to get in, because they wouldn't have been good enough last year. And guess what? If this is the 4-team field, maybe Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Georgia would be out. Wouldn't that be great?
Would it? Well, I'm not going down that.
Wouldn't it? Would, if you want to be an Indiana guy?
I'm not going down that road with it. But I will say, so essentially, Ari, you and I agree. When I say this system expanded, like, that's my own. I want this. To me, the system expanded to reward these teams that have these magical seasons out of nowhere, and you're not just shipping them off to a bowl game to face another opponent, to face a more marquee opponent that's sitting out half their team, like Missouri did last year with Ohio State, and celebrate Missouri because it beat a third of Ohio State's team in a bowl game. So that's why I totally agree with you. You listen, when The Athletic hired me to replace you, Ari, I wrote a column about a month ago that said Indiana is the most interesting team in the most interesting contender, and part of the reason why is they're not a blue blood. Are they going to suffer the, hey, like, you're Indiana, we don't trust you measurement when it comes to being compared to Tennessee or being compared to Alabama? I am totally on board with that. I just think it sucks. I agree with what you're saying, that I could see Indiana getting squeezed out. Listen, if Indiana gets rolled this weekend, I'll come off that stance. If they lose by 24, all right, you know what? It's a nice story. We probably can't squeeze them in there. But if they play competitively this weekend and get left out at 11-1 because another team's got a bigger brand and we have to get 5 SEC,
I'm with you. We agree. We're 100% on the same page.
Totally on board. But
we're
like,
saying the same thing. Yeah.
My point is, like, what's the sense of going to 12 if we're gonna just jam another SEC team? And I'm cool with 4, but like the fifth best SEC team.
Don't.
Like, we really need the 5th best SEC team in this
Mike.
I really have another
expanding to 12 if we're going to add another SEC team is the reason why I hated it, Ralph.
Yeah.
It's the whole reason I wasn't on board.
All of this is the reason why I love it.